This video will contain sensitive content based on allegations towards me. Please be advised that those of younger ages shouldn't involve themselves due to the following: mentions of swearing, rape, porn, grooming, pedophilia, ostracizing/bullying of individuals, sexual abuse, the use of slurs, exploitation, doxing, toxic behavior, mentions of suicide, the joking of suicide, and endangerment of minors. If you're sensitive to any of these topics, I advise you to click off this video. You have been warned. My name has become infamous now, what with the hashtag #H0peful Lucille on Twitter, that only survived for 3 days at the latest, and the sudden video uploads of prison mate Luke and Nani, along with a few others, but they're mostly minors that don't know the full story of the situation. However, for those who don't know who I am, my name is Lucille. I'm currently 22 and I create digital art and animation memes in hopes of inspiring others. The victim wishes for me to not name her, so I will not do so. Instead, I'll refer to her simply by her pronouns. I'll make sure to edit in when I'm talking about her since things may get confusing at times. This video is meant to look at her video while trying to explain my slip-ups and any additional context she never gave, so I apologize beforehand if I forget something or if I didn't give a better explanation to a specific point. She feels as if I had groomed her, so I apologize. Again, it wasn't my intention whatsoever. You never mentioned being uncomfortable with all of this during and after our relationship, until now. So I genuinely had no idea you were uncomfortable or disgusted with my past behavior. My previous video script was horribly written, hence why I sounded as if I were condescending, sarcastic, and I was a superior party, making it out to be as if I were manipulating the whole situation. So I apologize for this slip-up. Along with that, the Nagito Kinning was off-putting as well, adding to the manipulative narrative. It's not uncommon to hear someone kinning a character as a coping mechanism. I have friends who do this. You probably have friends who do this. What I did was the same as anyone else who kins, but what I didn't realize is that it'd be obstructing my thought process when editing my previous video, so I deeply apologize for doing so. My video was poorly planned and horribly executed, plain and simple. I'll first state claims made against me in her newest video that I found important, then give context behind my actions, words, etc.
The second reason is because I'm very afraid for Lucille's audience, who continue to support her.
She states that she's afraid for my fans because of my supposed manipulative behavior during my video. However, I won't go into this thoroughly until later. Do know that it wasn't my intention to sound like that.
Before the video even starts, I would like to address the Nagito sprite comments. Before the situation, I had little to no clue who Nagito was, but upon learning that he was a character from the popular series Danganronpa, it became clear what she was trying to do here. That is, to present herself in the likeness of another beloved character, so that people who already have a pre-existing affection for that character would be more likely to latch onto and believe her.
She claims the reasoning behind my kinning and acting as Nagito was so people attached to that character would be more inclined to believe me. While yes, you can have your own opinion and speculation as to why I did that in my video, it was nothing more than a hyperfixation on a character and incorporating them into my persona at the time. This hyperfixation was fairly fresh, a day before her first video came out, so it was fair to say that it leaked through the production of my video, which was my bad.
Lucille starts off the video focusing on her name, instead of the situation at large. The beginning segment is meant to sway the viewers into making it seem that I am a scumbag, by purposely referring to her by a name she no longer acknowledges. She also makes sure to tie her old name to my claim, and acts as if, by changing her name, these old claims are no longer tied to her. Except, before my video came out, your channel description still asked people to call you by Sam or Max. Unfortunately, I do not have a screenshot of her channel description pre-call out other than this. You can choose to believe or disbelieve my claim. Trying to paint me as if I had previous knowledge that you had changed your name, and am purposely using it despite that, is a shitty thing to do.
She says that I didn't have to add in the fact that she had deadnamed me since nobody outside my Discord server knew that I had changed my name in the first place. I didn't even change my YouTube description either. She also claims that because of this, I had tried to paint her as if she had previous knowledge of my name change. And because I had changed my name and channel name, it was assumed that I only did so that I could shake off whatever allegation my previous names had attached to them. Which is not entirely true, but I'll let it slide.
I do not condone deadnaming. My previous videos should make it very apparent that I do not like to go out of my way to insult or hurt anyone by using elements of their life against them. Hence why I am referring to Lucille by her preferred name.
You said yourself that you don't condone deadnaming, and you have apologized, yet you still go out of your way to show screenshots of when I called myself Sam/Max. The least you could have done is blurred my dead name and make a note that this was in fact me.
What she is doing is manipulative by using my real-life name, because she knows it will put me under intense amounts of distress, especially since she could easily have used the name Stream as she has done so before. Lucille, by the way, is 22. There's no way in the 7 levels of hell she did not know the consequences of her actions. If you believe me to be simply speculating about this, here is one of her replies where she directly acknowledges she did this out of spite.
And because she had used my dead name, I apparently used her real name as a manipulation tactic so that it would distress her and that I used it out of spite. Yes, I did use her real name out of spite, which I apologize for, but at the same time, no, that wasn't my only thought process behind that. My thought process of using her real name was because I wasn't talking about Streamline Workshop, the only persona that makes rant videos and animation memes, but I was talking about the person behind the screen. Nevertheless, I shouldn't have used her real name, and I apologize.
Her nonchalant attitude about everything gives the viewer the impression that the situation is not that bad, and a lot more casual, like you're just talking about your run-of-the-mill tea.
She claims that my nonchalant attitude downplayed the situation entirely, and as stated earlier, my previous video was poorly executed and I wrote that script as if I were playing a character, which is true to an extent.
Lucille here clearly states this video is to defend herself. Quote, defending myself leaves a bad taste in my mouth, but I guess I'll have to make do with what I have. End quote. This video is not a proper response to my call out. This video is meant to defend herself, no matter what the mods on her channel and she herself insists.
Yes, my previous video was made to defend myself and to explain a few things, even unnecessary details such as my personal life, another aspect that was pointed out to me manipulating the audience to take my side. It was as if I were being timed on giving answers, and it was worsened by mob mentality, due to the fact the claims made against me are very serious and illegal.
Lucille then tries to make it seem like I am just as bad as her by sticking me with a label that sounds scary, and people are generally unfamiliar with. Except, it's not a crime to be attracted to people who are older than you. It's a natural part of evolution to be attracted to signs of maturity. That's normal. Either way, this definition cannot be applied to me, as it is well known that I am asexual, meaning I don't feel sexual attraction to anyone. Being attracted to someone who is significantly less mature to you, in mind or body, is a crime. Lucille brushes aside the entire last section by leaving me with a definite label, and herself with none. The viewer is then sure to latch on to the label that is given, and since all previous labels are just obviously bad things, will automatically assume that the label assigned to me is bad, and makes me just as bad as her. This is one of the first examples of Lucille's manipulation.
I brought up the term teleophile because I was given labels such as pedophile and child predator, and groomer. A teleophile doesn't have much of a weight added to it since it's completely normal for a younger person to be attracted to an older person, but the moment an older person likes a younger person, it's a different story. And because I brought up teleophilia and labeled her under it, it automatically doesn't apply to her because the definition for the term says you have to be sexually attracted to the mature party, and she's asexual. Then it'd be correct for me to say that I don't apply under pedophilia because my sexuality doesn't apply under a certain age group. I gave her a definite label, teleophile, while I left myself with none. However, I classified myself under ephebophile, and then corrected myself by saying that I can't be because I'm not sexually attracted to minors, and certainly not this specific age group. Which means you're correct in saying that you're not a teleophile because you're not sexually attracted to adults.
Lucille's recounting of this situation is mostly accurate up to this point. I say mostly because she has left out an important detail that is quite incriminating to her person. Lucille and I met on the 9th of February. I found her channel through Fano shouting out Lucille on her old Discord and community tab. I was the one who asked Fano to include Lucille in the family, with the hopes of growing closer to her.
I had claimed she initiated the crush-like behavior first, which is true, but to her, I'm lying because I initiated first without knowing her feelings, which you cannot blame me for since I didn't know her feelings during the time until you had told me. Regardless, she said that she might like me only because she was a fan and had asked Fano to add me to the family in hopes of getting closer to me. Other people knew she had an interest in me, and I obviously hadn't known, but I confidently took the role of dad and rightfully played my part as part of the family.
What Lucille failed to mention, however, is that she hid her age from me for quite some time. I can't find the exact date she revealed her age to me, but up until the 18th of February, I was still in the dark about her age. Why would Lucille frame the situation like this? It makes it seem as if I, having fully known her age, should have backed off,
During the time I was getting to know everyone, my age wasn't known and only a handful of friends knew. She claims that I'm hiding my age not because of a legitimate reason, but as a tactic pedophiles / child predators / groomers use. I'm not denying that it was wrong of me to keep my age from her. It's not that I didn't want to keep my age hidden because I was a predator trying to lull a minor to surrender themselves to me, which, by the way, but because I wasn't comfortable with giving my age or even comfortable being my age.
Never mind that I was a starstruck minor without a fully developed brain. Why would Lucille hide her age for any reason? The excuse that it's because she's part of the animation meme community can only be used to her detriment.
I won't even use the excuse that because I was in the animation community, it gave me the right to hide my age. Again, it was not the reason why I did so in the first place. And I apologize for not knowing any better, despite being the older party. She called herself a starstruck young fan, hence why she liked me and why she didn't back off in the first place. However, I cannot blame you. You weren't supposed to be the one putting your foot down because you're a minor in this situation. I should have been the one to know when things were getting uncomfortably close, yet I didn't, and this is my fault to bear. But there is a keynote here. Neither of us officially dated. Neither of us, to my knowledge, have officially dated. I called it a relationship because it was closer than what a friendship felt. We had a mutual connection. With the way we spoke in our DMs, it could have only been seen as a romantic committed relationship. However, when I say my relationship with him or my relationship with her, it could mean anything unless given context. However, I should have given context so as not to confuse anyone, so I'll say it here. We did not officially date. It was assumed so by her when she had turned 16. We never asked the other if we wanted to date.
Lucille openly admits that she was thinking and drawing sexual things. But what is sexual harassment? Sexual harassment is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of sexual nature. With this definition, I can only say that this happened once, and it was in the previous screenshot I had shown. I do not think I can pin any more examples because at the time Lucille said these things, I was perfectly fine with them. Even if I no longer am now.
She claims that I have sexually harassed her because of the only known sexual discussion we had. However, it can't be labeled as such since she complied and indulged in the conversation. Again, note that she is asexual and was repulsed by sex in general, but nevertheless, she never said she was uncomfortable, nor did she try to voice it until after the fact. However, I shouldn't have been talking to you like that in the first place. I understand that now, even if it took me this long because you never spoke against it in the first place. And I can't blame you. There are photos of our time together, but for the sake of Iris, I won't release these images unless permitted by her.
Remember this. You will not be showing these images unless you have my permission, you say. I have not gotten one DM from you asking for approval to share these images. I am not saying that I am not okay with her using these images. I am saying that this is an example where she says one thing and then does the opposite.
She references the fact that I had shown the IRL images without her consent, yet she still continues to make the Google Drive publicly available for anyone to see. I had originally thought that since she made these images public that it was okay for me to show them.
Let's talk about Severance in more detail. What that is basically a game Lucille created after cutting her ties with all of her previous friends. On January 1st, Lucille left without saying a word, instead made a few videos taunting her previous friends while they were still hurting immensely from her severing ties with her old friends.
She mentions the severance in her Google Doc and in the video. However, there are two types of severances, but because they're heavily related to one another, I'll start with the event that caused the game's release. The reason I had left entirely was that I wasn't doing so well mentally. I had two friends at the time that I saw as creative partners, one of them being Looney Tooney, who we'll address later in the video. My thought process behind my disappearance was because I was starting to see signs in my behavior that made me obsessive. Looney Tooney was already in a relationship and the other friend was currently getting into one at the time. I never spoke about it to them because I was worried that I'd only make things worse by openly admitting that I was getting obsessive, possessive, and jealous over their healthy relationships. My desire to be incorporated in their lives was spiraling out of control. So without saying a word, I left. This isn't the first time I've done something like this since I've known someone for 5 years now that has in fact seen me disappear without a trace but somehow manages to find me continuously. Yes, I also made a video that only poured salt in their open wounds. That I will not excuse since it was unnecessary and I had only made their suffering worsen. I apologize for that. This next person I'll be talking about is in fact the woman who is willing to help me with the game Severance. I don't remember the exact date we spoke, but it must have been either late December 2019 or early January 2020. Now, the first draft of the game was set in an elementary where you were supposed to look for clues on what happened to Lou and why she disappeared. Looney Tooney and my other friend were in this game looking for answers. My friends who played the games were the ones looking for answers. Anyone else were confused bystanders thinking the game would just be that, a game. The game had multiple revisions until the one we have now, Severance. Truthfully, the game only had the name Severance because of the event that I childishly called the Severance, because I was severing myself from the online world. Everyone vents. This is no surprise. How I thought I had done it was through an artistic representation. However, it had only caused further suffering, but the game doesn't go into great detail about anyone else except for the character known as Lou, who is a fictional representation of me.
Lucille may claim this was because she thought herself to be a toxic person, but this video she made shortly after severing her ties doesn't seem to reflect that.
The hurt animatic she mentions doesn't include her in it, but instead my other ex-friends, two of which that I've spoken to personally. But this was used as a point of my manipulation and or toxicity.
She eventually came back to close the server down for good, while making the whole thing a joke, and her chosen friends laughed along with her, completely disregarding the anguish and hurt her friends were going through, including me. This is another example of Lucille being a genuinely toxic and horrible person.
The reason I came back to the server was that I had enough of multiple mods harassing my younger sister, simply for removing mod roles, changing roles back to the original names, etc. However, I had asked her to take care of my server and to keep it the way it was. The blame should be put on me and not for her simply doing as she was asked to. I treated the deletion of my server as a joke because I was already done with everybody's shit against my sister. The server was a fuck-up and I'm the only one to blame in the first place. Everyone else was still freshly suffering. They wanted answers from me, but I merely brushed them aside as I deleted the server without a second thought.
Something she did that was particularly disgusting was how she treated one of her former best friends, Weston. Weston was completely destroyed by the shenanigans Lucille had pulled, as they had been friends for the better part of 2 years. And when Weston found out Lucille had another server and managed to get invited in, Lucille basically gave him the cold shoulder the whole time, modeling a character after Weston's.
Remember Looney Tooney? She mentions Looney Tooney, who created a character named Wally. This character was paired with Juniper in my stories. After I had left and I wasn't on speaking terms with Looney Tooney, I designed Harper as the replacement of Wally since he wasn't my character. They both claim I had stolen the design and or was inspired by it. Twice. No character design or art style belongs to a single person. Everyone has their own creative differences, and thus this new character shouldn't be seen as nothing more than a new character. Simply speaking, if you're allowed to remake a character, then I'm allowed to do the same. Although the character was never mine, so I simply replaced him.
In fact, she still uses a character, which is very obviously inspired by Weston.
Toon Lou wasn't inspired by Looney Tooney's art style. The description reads, Bendy and the Ink Machine. I've only ever seen Markiplier playthrough of it, but I also saw Stephanie draw herself in ink form. So, take this, I guess. I don't know what I got myself into. I was inspired to draw myself in ink form when I saw someone, who was my friend at the time, draw herself in her own ink form. Conclusion, I wasn't inspired by Looney Tooney's art, nor was I inspired by his main character, Weston.
The game was about her cutting ties, framing it as if she was the one in the right all this time, and her new love interest as the main character. In this game, there is a library you can visit, which contains the relationships, and, surprise to no one, I was part of this library.
Severance was not about cutting ties. The event may have been, but not the game itself, and it wasn't meant to paint me as being in the right. It was merely artistic venting incorporated into my story.
No one said anything of the sort. You downplay what happened previously, and inflate the comment your sister left to the degree that it seems people are or have the intention to attack her at all.
I can't understand what she's saying here despite slowing her voice down, but I'll assume she's saying something like, no one has the intention to attack her at all, her being my younger sister. Ostracizing a minor is still harassment. A few of her idols that she looked up to banned her simply because she was my sister. This segment isn't directed to her, but to her friends who have kicked or banned my sister from their servers. You cannot say that it's not possible for you to ostracize a minor because you're also a minor. So let me put this in simpler terms for you. Have you ever been bullied in school? Have people ever purposely avoided or excluded you? This is the definition of ostracizing. What you're doing goes against what you're trying to protect.
No one is treating therapy like a magic cure. We all know it's not perfect, but it helps.
If what you're saying is true, then why are people still telling me to get therapy? I could easily assume that they think once I get proper treatment, my sexual attraction to minors will disappear as if it were a magical cure. You said it yourself, it's not perfect, but it helps. I have been getting therapy for a little over a couple of weeks now. But during my sessions, I'm not talking about how I'm sexually attracted to minors, because that's not something that was an issue in the first place.
Your complete and adamant refusal to get therapy, even bashing it, may sway those in your younger audience to sway away from that if they are considering or currently getting it because their idol said it wouldn't help.
I've clearly said that therapy wouldn't help me, not that it wouldn't help anyone else. But because I was openly bashing and refusing therapy, any impressionable young viewer could see it as such and therefore denied entirely, all because I said so, their idol in your own words.
This thought process is also damaging to yourself, Lucille. If you never change the way you think and still don't think you did anything wrong, which she doesn't, and proof of that will come up later on.
I know what I did was wrong, and it's inexcusable that it took this long for me to say it. Just how it's inexcusable how it took you this long to speak up about it. You made yourself believe that you were kept in silence because of my manipulation. If I had wanted you to be quiet, then I would have done drastic things to ensure you would stay silent and manipulated you into believing this was okay. I had even openly expressed in this supposed relationship that I thought it was wrong and illegal, hence my FBI joking.
There is every possibility you will once again prey on someone who is much younger than you, even if you are interested in someone else right now.
She states that there is a possibility that I could do this again, but I've stated beforehand that I'm not sexually or romantically attracted to minors. Unfortunately, because I showed potential of attraction, all due to one victim, I'll most likely do it again if the opportunity arises. However, I will say this now, I will not ever do this again. I've learned from this mistake, and I will stick to legal adults from now on.
What is the definition of grooming? Grooming is when someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or a young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. To provide unconditional emotional support is what I felt being forced upon me. That is the exploitation of a child's care and concern for someone. Gradually, the offender increases physical contact, patting on the back, hugging, wrestling, tickling, massaging, or kissing on the cheek. These moves can be subtle and bordering on what the child deems acceptable. Predators may present cuddling as a normal activity for adults and children who have a special relationship. All this was part of the regular time Lucille and I spent together. Suggestions of kissing, hugging, cuddling, and this was all normalized, even though it never should have been. While it may not have turned sexual outright, grooming does not always have to be sexual.
When I attempted to look up non-sexual grooming, it gave me multiple sites talking about how grooming will start with non-sexual touching to desensitize the child. Meanwhile, psychological grooming is about putting an individual into a position that makes them more isolated, dependent, likely to trust, and more vulnerable to abusive behavior that I never showed. Online grooming is different from your typical definition of grooming because I didn't have physical access to touch her. But you can argue that the creepy asterisk role-playing was a way of desensitizing her. It was fairly gross, and as I've said previously, I am disgusted by my past behavior. And during the times we've physically seen each other, I didn't think I was overstepping my boundaries. The first time, I admitted to hugging, holding her hand, and giving her a kiss on the cheek, with consent, might I add. She had done the same to me afterward. What she doesn't talk about is the second time we met. Instead of having an older party with us, I had brought a younger party, one of which was an underage family member. I never touched her during this time, keeping my hands to myself, and as I said before, the only time I had touched her was when I rested my head on her shoulder.
The problem is exacerbated when I got lukewarm responses to opening up. Yes, I've told her small things, like my low self-esteem, and general times when I felt jealous. But those are things all my friends know.
She says that I gave her lukewarm responses to her problems, which is true, but there is a reason behind it. I'm socially inept, and I know I shouldn't put the full blame on it. It's difficult for me to understand certain social cues without making things awkward and asking for reassurance. So words of encouragement or sympathy, or even trying to alleviate one's stress is something I'm clearly not good at. Any one of my current friends can vouch for my lack of words.
Maintaining control means the victim keeps quiet or continues to appropriate the groomer's behavior, which is 100% what happened to me. You can see video evidence of it in my Most Toxic Person in the Animation Meme Community video, where I continue to excuse Lucille's actions.
I wasn't making an attempt to keep control over you. I had never contacted her or made any attempt to. You justified your silence as proof that you were groomed only when people started commenting on a video that didn't have anything to do with me. Yes, you did appropriate my behavior. I had never asked you to do so.
Lucille tries to frame this as if I'm simply doing all this because I want clout and attention, and if this is so bad, why can't I go to the police about it? I didn't call the police. Let's break this down. First of all, these sorts of claims, if they do not directly show evidence of sexual behavior, are most likely to be swept under the bus. And even in situations where there is clear evidence of sexual behavior, like Onision's, it's very hard to get someone convicted. Secondly, like we learned from the Crystal drama, no one but the victim can get the police into action. And as stated previously, as there is not rock-solid evidence of sexual behavior, it is highly unlikely anything will happen.
Her reasoning behind not calling the police was because they wouldn't take this seriously because there wasn't any evidence of sexual exploitation or abuse, and it'd most likely be swept under the bus. Yes, that would be the case because grooming will mostly end in sexual exploitation or abuse, while the relationship we had did not.
Then there's the issue of my parents, who, well, wouldn't take the news so well, and most likely blame me for getting involved with you at all. And getting the police would also mean getting my parents, which is not the kind of mental stress I need.
Another reason she brought up was that she didn't want to bring up this with her parents simply because she didn't want to put any more stress on them. I can understand the fear of disappointing parents, but instead of keeping silent, you should have gone to the police, or an authority figure nonetheless, if you truly believed you were being groomed and manipulated to keep your silence. The Me Too movement started just for those who were silenced to speak out about their stories. Yes, I know that the movement was mainly stories of mature women talking about their sexual abuse caused by those in power, but it most likely could have also empowered anyone else to speak up about their own experiences.
No, I didn't, and still do not want anything to do with you.
If she wants nothing to do with me, then she would have moved on and recovered from this. But she is still continuing to damage her own mental health for the sake of exposing the things I'm currently doing or have currently done.
Fuck, I guess I should have suffered in silence then. How dare I try and seek answers? How dare I try to start a conversation in a civil manner by genuinely wishing her a happy birthday without mocking her?
The happy birthday she mentions was simply getting me to talk, to gain my attention. When she had it, she started by asking why I came back and that I should have just left for good, throwing away the civil manners, which is why I didn't respond afterward, so whatever answer she wanted, she never got because she had decided to start off strong and not remain civil. But this isn't the only time she had contacted me. She used an alt account that I didn't know was her at the time, joined my server, and used me to get a toy house code, which is exploitation. In fact, she had come into my server multiple times, alt and no alt, and only twice did she contact me, once for the toy house and once for the happy birthday. Her claim of wanting answers is very fishy to say the least.
The fact that people want to view children in sexual positions is disgusting because anyone under 18 is still a child.
You're correct. Anyone under 18 is still a child. However, you cannot control what they feel, think, or their actions. When children go through puberty, it's a scary process not knowing what is happening to you or your body. It's normal to have sexual thoughts, dreams, etc. Children are impressionable. They're easily manipulated and exploited, which is why it's always the adults, mainly their parents and or an authority figure, responsibility to keep them safe from both the online and offline world. Legal issues only occur when an older person, such as an higher authority figure, teacher, police officer, etc., try to engage in sexual activities with a minor that is automatically seen as statutory rape.
Explanation has little to do with the situation other than to paint Lucille in a sympathetic light. There is nothing inherently wrong with her explaining this bit. What makes it bad is that she chose to put it in this video where it has no business being, and nothing to add to the discussion other than what a great person Lucille is. Cue the thing I told you to remember. She actively brushes off this screenshot, but was so willing to go into detail about something irrelevant to the situation.
In my video, I went into unnecessary information, such as my private home/life matters, but when it comes to offensive jokes about being taken to jail or the FBI showing up, I brush it off. I'll address this point later, so bear with me.
She said herself that we both thought we would be dating when I turned 16. I turned 16 and automatically assumed that meant we were dating. This screenshot happened after my 16th birthday, which is June 26th.
I was never given any knowledge about this. Throughout the time I've known her, I haven't asked for her consent to officially date. She hasn't asked for my consent to officially date. The fact that she automatically assumed we were dating when she turned 16 is completely new to me. During the time I was talking to her, even when she turned 16, I didn't see her as an official girlfriend because I decided to wait until she was the appropriate age, 18. Sure, I never spoke about it to her, but she had done the same thing, not speaking to me about the fact that she automatically assumed that we were dating.
I did not call you a pedophile.
No, you never called me a pedophile, and you never called anyone who drew lewd art of fictional minors pedophiles. However, you're making the implication that this is what I and anyone else are because we lewd fictional minors.
And please stop trying to make it seem that children can, in any way, in these sorts of scenarios, be at fault. It is damaging for your fans who will believe you, and therefore discredit future and current victims. And it is damaging to those who are watching and considering coming out, who will then believe it is in some way their fault because they had a scary term tacked onto them.
The minor is never at fault if they were groomed. That is correct. But saying that I'm making it harder for my younger audience to speak for themselves if they've been or are currently being groomed isn't the message I am trying to portray, and you're not helping by making this a public matter.
As for myself, I do not want an apology from you, and do not use this as an excuse to say you don't need to apologize. I do not want closure from you. I simply do not want you to be part of my life ever again.
And you will never have to do anything involving me ever again.
Believing that people are attacking you by telling you you need to seek professional help is quite the leap in logic. Those are not attacks. People saw my video and wanted you to take responsibility for your actions, which include getting better.
She claims that I believe the people that are attacking me because I need to seek professional help is a leap in logic. It's not, although I can see how you'd believe that. You're attacking my mental health and seeing it as a source of the problem.
The situation is not going to die down. Not until you take responsibility for your actions.
This is what my video is meant to do, not my previous one, as it is now seen as outdated. I know now that the situation won't die down due to the fact that you continue to create tweets and post images without proper context, despite saying you want nothing to do with me. Whatever happens, happens, and I'll have to live with the lingering after effects, so long as I take responsibility, as I've said a few times on my server, and even in one of the screenshots you provided.
Lucille leaves the video off as if she still holds me in some sort of good light, which is not the case at all, as evident by the comment section and her Discord server. Lucille is seen here, actively endorsing someone who has said in the livestream chat that I was faking depression for views, and we'll talk about the Discord server later.
She claims that I still see her in a good light, but I think that is no longer true. You and your mods don't monitor what your underage fans are saying on your server, but you can use the excuse that you cannot control what they say and that they have the right to say whatever they want as free speech. I myself cannot control what people say, and I won't manipulate what they say to paint myself in a better image. That's not what I want. My mods are muting people that weren't listening to the video and bashing anything I had to say, which is fine for them to do now since that video is now considered outdated. I could make an attempt to recollect the whole story on my side from when I met her all the way up until now, or at the very least the important bits. I've stated in my previous video that I don't have the greatest memory, so anything that I will say will have to be taken with some skepticism. This is what I believe started it all. A popular Undertale meme animator at the time boosted my video with this post and thus started my small fan base. After, this will all be speculation and assumption. Don't take my word as fact. I'll try not to repeat the same thing as my previous video, so I'll make this short. I was added into the family group chat, and I confidently took the role as dad. I don't think I had a crush on her since I didn't know her, so the creepy asterisk smooch forehead was just me pretending to be dad. During the same day, we started talking through DMs. I spoke to her how I speak to anyone that wants to get to know me or if they're a fan of me. You could argue this is when I started showing signs of interest, but I used the infamous waifu word rather than straight up calling her wife. However, no, I still didn't have any feelings towards her. I think this is when I started to show signs of interest. However, during this time, I was also crushing over a few other people, one of them being a close friend of mine who is in a relationship. I'm not going to assume her life or her living situations, so I won't make any comments about it. However, during the time I was getting to know her, there were multiple incidents before and during the time I was getting to know her that deteriorated my mental health. And the unnecessary information comes into play here, but we'll be going over them in the next segment. This is where my recollection starts to dwindle. The DMs were just us starting to gain one another's trust in a private and safe environment. Never had I showed signs of coercion or abuse or anything like that. I'm not going to blame her for having an interest in me in the first place or even trying to get close to me. When you're a fan of someone, it's completely normal for you to want to get to know that person. So no, I'm not going to blame her, as this was my fault for not putting my foot down and telling her not to interact with me because I'm much older than she is. But because I wasn't in the right mindset during this time, I was desperate for any kind of positive reinforcement, and I didn't think I'd be getting it from someone like her. And no, you cannot say that I'm using my mental health as an excuse here. This will be addressed soon. I'd also like to bring up something that came to my attention. When you read the DMs, the narrative can go both ways. You can see this as my manipulation and grooming tactics, or you can see this as another perspective, which I'm not saying this narrative is fact or that you should take my word for it. But she is the one to approach me, going to her friend and telling her I might like him, and that caused her to add me to the family group chat, effectively putting me on the spot and in a role I didn't ask for. And this opened me up to speaking about 2 previous relationships, which I hadn't resisted talking about one bit because at the time I believed that it was okay and that I could trust her with sensitive information, even talking about my fear of abandonment. She's known me for a day now, and it didn't take her long to ask where I had lived. Additionally, I'd like to bring up that she found out my age on February 11th, 2 days after we had first gotten to know each other. And assuming by the message, they must have not liked the fact that I was older. I think that's all I can say on the matter. And because I spoke about my personal information, I started to garner feelings for her, which effectively made it so that I trusted her and thus let my guard down in the process. I knew nothing about her, yet she knew sensitive bits about me. But again, this is just one of the narratives that you can look at. I'm not forcing you to sympathize with me, nor am I asking you to believe me. I simply want you to listen. I don't know if this is the first instance we've said I love you to each other, but there was also my deleted server and a few other servers that we were in together, but it took 13 days for us to say it and probably mean it. That in itself is odd to begin with. A meaningful relationship shouldn't exist when we've only known each other for 13 days. I can make an attempt to explain why it was easy for me to fall for her. Grooming is a two-way street. Adult grooming exists just as child grooming does, and in case you haven't noticed my use of the words socially inept, I'm autistic and have been diagnosed by my therapist. However, I'm not going to use my autism as an excuse or as a tactic to get you to take my side. This is not what I want. I'm trying to explain that it is also a possibility that I was groomed, as she used words like "you're a pretty charming artist" or "you're also a thief because you've stolen my heart" as playful, flirty banter to get me to lower my guard, and used obsessive language. But then again, I can also say that I wasn't groomed because there was no sexual or financial exploitation. I had created a roleplay server known as TCRS with a bunch of friends, including her and a few others. The person she's talking to wanted to ship her OC with Samuel, stating that she doesn't like me, but she wanted to do something fun with her OC. However, she saw this as absolutely wrong and decided to confront her, telling her that she chose the wrong character and getting overall possessive and aggressive, all because of a fictional character shipping. But despite that, I was okay with this ship. I had even expressed that I thought she was overreacting over fictional characters being shipped. However, she did bring up that this version of Samuel was a persona of mine at the time. Well, yes, that was supposed to be the case. However, I never drew Samuel as a persona, but as a character in the TCRS story. Which meant that I saw it as okay for me to ship him with someone else's character, because I thought the ship was cute, not that I actually liked that person. I don't remember much of this, but the family group chat was disbanded due to our age gap that a few people found uncomfortable. Fano had even expressed that she was upset with her because she had got upset at the fact that someone couldn't ship their character with mine. I don't want to go through all the DMs again since there's nothing new that I can bring to the table. If I miss any unanswered questions, then they're probably not as important as you may think, or that I forgot about them, so I apologize beforehand. During the time we were seen together, I had also invited her to a private server that had me and a couple of friends I've known since the DeviantArt days. Most, if not all of them, were of legal age. This is where these screenshots originated from. I had even said, let me non-sexually love my wife first, but it was probably glossed over, so I can't blame anyone if they didn't see that specific message. But everyone in this server was of legal age, and didn't make an attempt to question the legality or morality of the situation, accepting her with open arms into the server group and becoming friends with her. I'm not sure where this screenshot came from, but for the record, no. Just because I called her my girlfriend didn't mean that I believed that she was officially my girlfriend. Not sure why I used this word instead of wife at the time, and no, I'm not excusing my poor wording either. I'm just baffled at myself. Which brings me to something of equal importance. The fact that she doesn't bring up that nobody saw anything wrong with it, neither her fans or friends. And she says we decided not to pursue our relationship, which contradicts her belief that we were in a relationship. People both in her and my server before it was deleted praised our relationship and how we were brave despite the age gap. Nobody batted an eye, nor was anyone showing any kind of concern during it. I can only assume it was because they knew that I wasn't exploiting or abusing her. The only reason I was supposedly called a pedophile during the time we were seen together was because someone wanted petty revenge because she didn't see them as friends anymore. That's only going off of my assumptions, so again, don't take my word as fact. And lastly, I'd like to briefly mention the screenshot that was taken on the personal friend server. She admits that both parties were consenting and that there wasn't any underlying motive to our supposed relationship. I think that's all I can remember for the time being. If anything else comes up, then I apologize, but I won't be talking about this situation anymore because it's gone on long enough. I said I'd talk about this later, and I will do so now. The reason why I spoke about unnecessary information, such as a family member getting stabbed and then taken to the hospital, or even things such as my mom getting arrested, my dad having cancer, which thankfully he doesn't, and the like. They're necessary because during the time I interacted with her, I was in an emotionally vulnerable state, which made it easier for me to trust her and for her to trust me. Even before that, the sexual trauma that continues to haunt me was just as important because I was still raw with emotion, and I could most easily have broken if someone had used the right set of words. I wasn't using any of this unnecessary information to coax you, the viewer, to sympathize or pity me so I could get brownie points. It was poorly executed, but I was trying to explain that I was emotionally vulnerable at the time and still am. I'll be clearing up a few screenshots that she has on her Twitter or in her YouTube video which she doesn't give or have much context for. It's no secret that the internet has since become increasingly sensitive over the years. Nobody can take offensive jokes without feeling as if they're being attacked or about to relapse or get triggered. My sister was friends with this person once. I was hesitant to send the message, but when she gave me the okay to send it, since we both saw it as nothing more than a joke, I sent the comment. Yes, I shouldn't have sent it whatsoever, but what's done is done, and I apologize for my behavior. At first, I changed my username because I thought I'd be in the clear, but after I have since found out that even if I change my name, my user ID will stay the same, so there was no point in running away. I decided to change my name to the third one as a joke, seeing if she'd take it seriously, and she really did. Once the joke was over, I simply went back to H0peful Lucille. I apologize for any offense to the CBT name change. I can't speak for the other person in the screenshot, but I worded it rather poorly, but my point still stands. Everyone is treating the situation like I had seriously sexually abused or exploited her when in fact I didn't, and she even addresses this on her Twitter. I had even made sure to spoil the word and I expressed my disgust accordingly. The reason my followers dropped from 21 to 9 was simply because I was blocking minors. I didn't think I'd have to explain this, but there you go. I thought that if I had waited a little longer, the mob mentality would somewhat dwindle so people would be able to think with a clear conscience. But that clearly wasn't the case since most of those that were upset with me are minors. Waiting was a bad idea. I wasn't running away from the situation, nor do I think that I wasn't in the wrong. Nor was I waiting for it to calm down before returning, since even if I did wait, I'd still be met with the same aggression. This was the only known instance where I talk about sex with her. She never expressed her disgust towards the subject, nor did she ever try to stop it, instead complying and indulging in it. But I can't put the blame on her either. It's been over a year now, and I can safely say that I don't think like this anymore. While yes, I may talk about fictional men and how attractive they are, but I also get sick when thinking about participating in the act itself now. I've said before that I cannot excuse my behavior and the way I spoke. This is my fault, and I shouldn't have spoken like this to a minor in the first place. I'm sorry. I believe that this was the only screenshot relevant to her other one. She constantly jokes about her mental state, saying that she'll commit not breathing, or joke about taking the Tide Pod challenge. It's not uncommon to hear someone make a joke about offing themselves. Suicide is not a joke and shouldn't be seen as such. Sure, you can use it as an offensive joke between close friends, but there's a difference between joking about it in a public setting and implicating it that you're going to incite it. If you're going to take a break, then by all means, do it if it means that you're recovering at your own pace. What you shouldn't do is add in, I've been having a concerning amount of thoughts of ceasing to breathe.exe and at everybody about it. Your mental health should be a private matter or vented out in a vent chat, not as a joke in front of your young fans. But I cannot control what you say or do, and in nowhere was I making fun of your mental state. No, none of us were stalking you. I was in your server simply to see how you were handling the situation. So far, I've seen nothing but minors attacking others simply because they didn't know what's going on. I've seen none of your mods, or even you, try to stop them from talking about me. Didn't you say that you didn't want anything to do with me? Then why are you letting them continue to talk about me when you yourself said you wanted to move on from this? You're handling the situation pretty poorly, even making a hashtag that means nothing and continuing to update every time I take a single step. Then again, I'm not handling it any better. No, I never edited anyone's comments. They simply asked for my opinion to keep it as neutral as possible, and I didn't add on to it. This person was just as chaotic as everyone else in the premiere chat. We even muted them at one point, but unfortunately we didn't mute them any other time. However, I do not condone the things they were saying. Yes, this was rather childish of me to do in the first place, and I'm sorry. I never upload to Tumblr anymore. I now mainly use it to look at MHA content or memes. I had completely forgotten that I had said this. I apologize for my use of the slur. No, you're not connecting any dots. The reason the Discord server was closed was because you or somebody else was spying on the server, which endangered the privacy of other Discord users. There were videos that I had deleted before I posted this on my community tab, a few of which were Severance teaser trailers, one being the elementary that had my two ex-friends in it, one was for the release date for the current Severance game, and another was simply my birth date that was an IRL video. Another video was a collaboration I had done with the Family Squad, another was a Not in Love vent, one was a January hiatus, one was a Merry Christmas, sorry for no recent memes, another was a Discord server invite video, and the last one I could think of was the video dedicated for her when we were chummy. However, that video was taken down because of copyright rather than me willingly deleting it. So no, there weren't any sus videos. This is a difficult subject to talk about since it talks about both the legality and the morality of the situation, and everyone has their own differentiating opinions on what is considered morale. Let's start with morality. It is illegal to lewd minors when they're not fictional. It's morally wrong to be lewding fictional minors, this is true, but fictional minors cannot give consent. I've even read a comment that goes into this that was made on your own post. If the creator of a said minor character or characters says that it is wrong or just want people to draw them as such, then we should respect their terms. Aging up fictional minors exists too. They're not real, and you should stop treating them as such. Pedophiles and child molesters can be lolly/shotacons, but lolly/shotacons cannot be pedophiles or child molesters simply because they're people who live out their regular lives in human society enjoying fictitious artwork of minors and never acting out their sexually twisted fantasies because lolly/shotacon art exists to satiate that desire. My Twitter account at the time didn't have the 18+ tag on it. I was planning on using this account for when I uploaded art or when I would announce streams or new uploads, but because I never uploaded much art or never announced any videos, I decided to use my Twitter, H0peful Lucille, as my personal account. Which meant I thought it would be okay to retweet art that I admired, so I apologize on my behalf for not putting on the 18+ tag beforehand. Moving on to the legality of the situation, reminder that we're both from Canada, so our legal laws will most likely be different from those who are not from here. Minors at the age of 12 or 13 can consent to non-exploitative sexual activity when the age difference is no more than 2 years. For example, a 12-year-old is deemed capable of consenting to sexual activity with a 14-year-old, but not a 15-year-old. Minors at the age of 14 or 15 can consent to non-exploitative sexual activity when the age difference is no more than 5 years. For example, a 15-year-old can consent to have sexual intercourse with a 20-year-old, but not with a 21-year-old. Children younger than 12 years of age can never consent to sexual activity with anyone of any age, regardless of whether they say they do. And you cannot use your asexuality as an excuse for why this doesn't apply to you. If you ignore the sexual activity parts, it is technically legal for a person of age 15 to consent to a relationship with a 20-year-old as long as it is non-exploitative. While yes, creepy and morally wrong, it is legal. The internet is not a safe space, and it was never meant to be. You keep it safe for yourself by curating your online experience. It is not up to anyone else to stop posting content you personally find harmful. It is up to you to read content warnings and block tags, blogs, users where this content exists so that you don't have to see it. If you are too young to do this yourself, you're too young to be on the internet unsupervised. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, this is still the internet where morals tend to not matter in some or most cases. It's common knowledge that Discord, Twitter, and YouTube are now seen as the one-stop shop for conversation around the world, overtaking media like Skype and Facebook. During recent years, drama channels, rant channels, or just tea-spill channels in general have since normalized the publication of private matters. However, drama comes in many forms, such as foolproof and boosting awareness for a real predator/toxic person, etc. Sometimes they're petty, like calling out someone simply because they've wronged you one too many times. Call-out videos/posts are given a bigger spotlight simply because the younger audience are still impressionable and easily entertained by sudden drama. And what people don't realize is that because you're normalizing the publication of personal matters, such as a situation, it's not just affecting the supposed perpetrator and the victim, but everyone else that is affiliated with them, mainly those who are seen as friends, family, or fans of either parties. And because the younger audiences are impressionable, they can easily get inspired by their favorite channels and attempt to make their own content similar to their idols. I can't assume their age, but this doesn't just apply to YouTube content. This can also apply to how the minors in your server are currently acting. Lashing out at others for simply not knowing the current situation, unyielding when the topic circles back to me and how disgusting of a person I am, despite not knowing me and going off of one-sided videos and an improper response. You're putting these minors in danger if they continue to talk like this. They're even starting to give you a bad impression due to lashing out at one person for not knowing any better. I didn't see any of your mods or even you trying to put a stop to this, and the person had left due to this. I brought up before how I was on your server, not to stalk you, but to see how you're handling the situation. This is exactly what I meant. The comments I've approved of can also be considered evidence of the endangerment of bystanders due to how others are responding to said comments. Even the people on my server, along with my friends who had nothing to do with this, have also been getting backlash simply because they're affiliated to me and or support me. Most of the people who support me are my friends. Friends can and should criticize certain actions yet still have the right to support you. Having a bunch of yes men who don't question your actions are not your friends. Real friends should look out for one another and be able to tell each other when something you say or do is wrong when necessary. If friends do decide to end their friendship, then it should be handled responsibly and not as a means to spread toxicity by stabbing in the back, sharing sensitive info, insulting one another as a moral high ground, or even forcing them to choose sides. And when someone has something neutral to say, they're immediately seen as just as bad as those who are supporting me simply because they're in a gray area. I've said all I could on how the behavior is on YouTube. Let's move to Discord. A few people were also inciting aggression even when someone said that this server was meant to be a positive vibes only, and I still see no sign of mods or you attempting to stop it. You mentioned not wanting anything to do with me, and yet you're letting these minors run wild in your server talking about your supposed groomer. How can you not be bothered by this when you're trying to move on and recover? It doesn't make it any better when you're actively ostracizing people that simply want to like both parties' contents. And then quickly backtrack to say, don't attack or blame the minors interacting with Lucille for not knowing any better. You're seriously too late for that because before you made this message, at least 7 minors that were fans of both of our content started to panic for their own safety and have begged me and my mods to protect their privacy. I've had to remove multiple messages from certain users while you or someone else were collecting screenshots on my server. And you still continue to recklessly tweet the screenshots without blurring their names and their icons. One of my friends was publicly humiliated and called out by former friends because they were affiliated with me, and they are powerless to stop it because they are not in contact and/or in their servers anymore. They are a minor. Even strangers that simply wanted to know both sides were concerned for their safety and their public image simply because they were curious. And the fact that you have older people in your server astonishes me. I'd imagine if someone were groomed, that they'd most likely not interact with any adults or even have adults in your server where they, and I quote, can basically be almost the majority of people's father in this server. And while I was looking for the appropriate screenshots, I even received a comment from the same man who was in your server. Studies show that brains aren't fully developed until you're the age of 25. However, this comment proves that adults older than me are not taking this as serious and that their brains haven't fully developed either. And if this man had watched my video or had seen your Google Drive prior to you removing and editing evidence, I've been sexually harassed / exploited as a child and have trauma to any sort of sexual comments or insults such as this. Because this man supports you, it is painting you in a disgusting light that you would allow older people to talk like this on your behalf. I'm not making this video in an attempt to defend myself poorly just as the last video did, but for those who were gravely affected for simply being a bystander or an uninvolved innocent who have no platform to defend themselves. They will remain anonymous for their safety. I'll be reading their statements, and if you attempt to decipher who these people are, then you're invading their privacy for the sake of harassment, and nothing can nor will justify your reasoning for witch hunting. Statement 1. I feel as if it's unfair and only one side of the story was given. There always needs to be two sides of a story, and the way the drama is affecting me is mentally damaging. Seeing people I looked up to start to hate me, getting banned from multiple servers just because I support you, crying for God knows how long because I thought I was finally getting appreciated from my idols because of my fan art for them. Thinking of self-harm because all I want is for this to end. Dude, this sucks. Statement 2. I think this drama is valid. Yes, but you have changed from 2 years ago. I admit your actions were reckless, but honestly, the conversations that Stream had shared in the drive seemed quite normal, like a normal conversation between two friends or even a relationship. What you said to her wouldn't have mattered if you were a minor, but you aren't, so that changes the whole situation, right? Honestly, I wish this would end so we could all relax. This drama shouldn't have dragged out for this long, to be honest. Her feelings are valid, your feelings are valid, the public's feelings are valid. Yet, the public claims that yours aren't anymore because you are a predator, because you are dangerous, because you are toxic. I'm fully aware of the things you've done, and I do not agree with those claims. You are not toxic or dangerous. People will say I'm wrong if I say you're not predatory, I bet. But Lou, you are a good person. I've known you since you were with Stream. You weren't doing anything that was sus at the time. You expressed your love for Stream at times in your old server, and she was fine with it. Everyone was fine with it. No one saw a problem with it. So why now? It's ridiculous this shit is being broadcasted on YouTube only years after the crime. It just baffles me, honestly. If people are going to talk to you about this topic, they need to consider your side as well, and they need to talk to you in a civilized manner. They shouldn't yell at you for a mistake you've made in the past. This has affected me in ways I cannot describe, really. You are being called a pedophile, predator, etc., which is sickening to see. People have begun judging me for supporting you, although I never said I supported your actions. I support you as a person. I do not condone predatory behavior, nor pedophilia. I do not see why it is so hard to understand. You are a good friend. I wish people would just take the time to get to know your side, especially people who don't know you or Stream. Statement 3. All of this could have been extremely more professional. Streamline Workshop could have taken to a proper private measure to handle this, but has made public knowledge about the fact H0peful Lucille's own trauma, has inadvertently sent out harassments by her followers, and keeps adding more fuel to the fire with instigating further drama. They also haven't stopped the harassments of bystanders, supporters of Lucille, and encourages it with the way she speaks about them. It's both unprofessional, childish, and has caused fear in many innocent bystanders. This situation has even caused one of my friends to leave the entire Discord platform due to the comfortability of it all. Lastly, the fact that there were people literally sent to Lucille's public server just to spy and involve even more bystanders shows how low a person they are and the following she has under her influence. This sleepy person also is to blame for more being added to something that should have been left to die. In my opinion, that person just wants to witch hunt Lucille for their own sick desire to get retribution for their own past that shouldn't be attached to the current situation. All in all, I find the entire situation sickening and hope that Lucille and Stream can come to terms, and that the others outside of it should probably butt out of the matter that should have been private and not televised all over YouTube. Statement 4. Hello Stream, if you're watching that is. Your actions on Twitter and your community posts genuinely disgust me. As a mod of Lou's server, which has now been shut down, I have had to comfort at least 7 minors because of them fearing for their safety and then being afraid of being attacked or doxxed just because they were associated with Lou. I myself have been attacked and called out by a now ex-friend of mine, and I'm helpless to stop it because I'm not in their server anymore. Do you know how many people must hate and despise me because I was a friend of Lou? I myself am a minor, younger than you at that. I fear for my own safety too, as those people know my face and my name. A word of advice, don't involve random bystanders with drama that they're not part of. Blur names and stop this drama. Please move on and let bygones be bygones. End Statement 5. To this drama, I dislike it fully. I do not condone Lucille's actions, nor yours, Streamline Workshop. You two are both at fault. You both should have been careful, but I understand because we are all human. We all do and say things that we regret and have different opinions on. But you shouldn't bash people because they are different or talking to someone you dislike. I lost so many people because of this drama, which should have been discussed privately and only in privacy. This stuff happened 2 years ago, and if you, Streamline, have cared more for the situation, then you would have spoken it to her by now if it bothered you for this long. Yes, you could say that it is because she scarred you, or she would ignore you, but if you took a step to talk about it, you can at least say that you have tried to speak about it privately. Also, having adults in your server around, or even older than Lucille within your server, shows more that you do not care for the situation. If you really believe that it has upset you, do you want to repeat it again with another adult such as Prisonmate Luke or another adult within your server? And how you are harassing individuals who have no part in this and keep mobbing about it on Twitter is the most unprofessional act I have seen. You are an influencer with 40k subs, which I do congratulate you on that feat, but how you got it has harmed so many people in the process. It influences your followers that what you do will be seen as okay by them. Just because it is online, it doesn't mean that you aren't harming the people behind the screen. We are all people in the end. But certain people that I know that are with you should not be involved. This is your fight, Streamline, and only yours and Lucille's. Don't drag anyone else, especially the innocent bystanders, or the people who like Lucille and make them two sides. That's toxic behavior, but I have no ill will against you. You have every right to speak your mind, but stop harming people and causing damage in the process. Just stop this, and resume to your healing without harming or dragging people into it. And to the people who are my friends and work with Streamline, this is not your fight. Just because of the severance and the damage and salt you have, doesn't give you the right nor the excuse to do whatever that you are doing. I wish you all and Streamline have a better future, and continue to not harm others in the process. I wish after this video that the drama ceases and we can continue with our lives. It unfortunately took longer than expected for a better and serious take of this situation, and I yet again felt as if I were being rushed into giving answers, but this time I was readily prepared after taking a considerable amount of time to clear my head. I'm not being influenced by a current hyperfixation, so I can safely say that I'm speaking as myself this time as I should have been the first time. This situation culminated from nearly almost 2 years worth of silence, and I want to move on from this so I can continue to do art and animation so that I can inspire people. During this time, I will keep myself sparse from those who I knew that were heavily affected so that they may take the time to recover at their own pace, as the situation was emotionally draining for everyone. And I ask for you to cease making tweets about me if you truly believe that you want nothing to do with me and that you want to move on from this, recover from this so-called trauma, and do what you want in life. I'd also like to lastly add in, when I was in your server, there was a channel specifically used for gore. While yes, it is fictional, it is also available for any minor to see. There were no specifications to access this channel, so anyone can enter with a simple click of a button. And seeing how you're a young influencer, with the majority of your Discord server being minors, I would like to politely recommend that you immediately remove your gore channel. Right when I thought I could possibly say all that I could, it has come to my attention that what you're currently doing has nothing to do with outing me as a groomer. You used my video and then brought up old news as a way to out me as someone who is a manipulative scumbag, as you would say. I'm human. I make mistakes, but I won't ever find dark humor not funny. The use of slurs were done in harmless fun, which is rather hypocritical of you to think of because you also had this to say.
When it comes to racial slurs, there's going to be a lot of disagreements. Some people think they're okay, as long as they aren't being used in a bad manner, while others think that never under any circumstances should they be allowed to be used. I'm a minority myself, and being a Chinese person going through the whole COVID fiasco, I've experienced my fair share of racism. Even before COVID, I've had my fair share of racism. Obviously, I'm not going to claim that just because I'm a minority, that I suddenly completely understand the Black Lives Matter movement on the level an African American would, but I can relate a bit to their troubles of discrimination. For this video, we will obviously have to address when or if it's appropriate to use racial slurs. Here's the short answer. Sometimes.
I think I've said all that I really could. This will be my final input to this sick vendetta drama she has against me. My name is Lucille, and I'm hopeful for a better future.